Hey guys, it's me again with another installment of Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. We are on page 67, April 24. Are we ready? Ready? Okay. Professor Niemer finally agreed with Dr. Strauss and me that it will be impossible for me to write down everything if I know it's immediately read by people at the lab. I've tried to be completely honest about everything, no matter who I was talking about, but there are things I can't put down unless I can keep them private, at least for a while. Now, I'm allowed to keep back some of these more personal reports, but before the final report to the Wellberg Foundation, Professor Niemer will read through everything to decide what part of it should be published. What happened today at the lab was very upsetting. I dropped by the office earlier this evening to ask Dr. Strauss or Professor Niemer if they thought it would be all right for me to ask Alice Kinnian out to a movie. But before I could knock, I heard them arguing with each other. I shouldn't have stayed, but it's hard to break the habit of listening because people have always spoken and acted as if I weren't there, as if they never cared what I overheard. I heard someone bang on the desk, and then Professor Niemer shouted, I've always informed the convention committee that we will present the paper at Chicago. Then I heard Dr. Strauss's voice. But you're wrong, Harold. 6 weeks from now is still too soon. He's still changing. And then Niemer, we've predicted the pattern correctly so far. We're justified in making an interim report. I tell you, Jay, there's nothing to be afraid of. We've succeeded. It's all positive. Nothing can go wrong now. Strauss, this is too important to all of us to bring it out into the open prematurely. You're taking the authority on yourself. Niemer, you forget that I'm the senior member of this project. Strauss, and you forget that you're not the only one with a reputation to consider. If we claim too much now, our whole hypothesis will come under fire. Niemer, I'm not afraid of regression anymore. I've checked and rechecked everything. An interim report will do no harm. I feel sure nothing can go wrong now. The argument went on that way with Strauss saying that Niemer had his eye on the chair of psychology at Halston, and Niemer saying that Strauss was riding on the coattails of his psychological research. Then Strauss said that the project had as much to do with his techniques in psychosurgery and enzyme injection patterns as with Niemer's theories, and that someday thousands of neurosurgeons all over the world will be using his methods. But at this point, Niemer reminded him that those new techniques would never have come about if not for his original theory. They called each other names: opportunist, cynic, pessimist, and I found myself frightened. Suddenly, I realized I no longer had the right to stand there outside the office and listen to them without their knowing it. They might not have cared when I was too feeble-minded to know what was going on, but now that I could understand, they wouldn't want me to hear it. I left without waiting for the outcome. It was dark, and I walked for a long time trying to figure out why I was so frightened. I was seeing them clearly for the first time, not gods or even heroes, but just two men worried about getting something out of their work. Yet, if Niemer is right and the experiment is a success, what does it matter? There's so much to do, so many plans to make. I'll wait until tomorrow to ask them about taking Miss Kinnian to a movie to celebrate my raise. April 26. I know I shouldn't hang around the college when I'm through at the lab, but seeing the young men and women going back and forth carrying books and hearing them talk about all the things they're learning in their classes excites me. I wish I could sit and talk with them over coffee in the campus bowl luncheonette when they get together to argue about books and politics and ideas. It's exciting to hear them talking about poetry and science and philosophy, about Shakespeare and Milton, Newton and Einstein and Freud, about Plato and Hegel and Kant and all the other names that echo like great church bells in my mind. Sometimes I listen in on the conversations at the tables around me and pretend I'm a college student, even though I'm a lot older than they are. I carry books around, and I've started to smoke a pipe. It's silly, but since I belong at the lab, I feel as if I'm part of the university. I hate to go home to that lonely room. So now Charlie is starting to embrace his intellectual side. He wants to learn now. He wants to talk with people and communicate and express ideas and learn things. His mind is expanding and he wants it to expand even more. April 27. I've made friends with some of the boys at the campus bowl. They were arguing about whether or not Shakespeare really wrote Shakespeare's plays. One of the boys, the fat one with the sweaty face, said that Marlowe wrote all of Shakespeare's plays. But Lenny, the short kid with dark glasses, didn't believe that business about Marlowe, and he said that everyone knew that Sir Francis Bacon wrote the plays because Shakespeare had never been to college and never had the education that shows up in those plays. That's when the one with the freshman beanie said he had heard a couple of guys in the men's room talking about how Shakespeare's plays were really written by a lady. And they talked about politics and art and God. I never before heard anyone say that there might not be a God. That frightened me because for the first time I began to think about what God means. Now I understand one of the important reasons for going to college and getting an education is to learn that the things you've believed in all your life aren't true, and that nothing is what it appears to be. All the time they talked and argued, I felt the excitement bubble up inside me. This was what I wanted to do. Go to college and hear people talk about important things. I spend most of my free time at the library now, reading and soaking up what I can from books. I'm not concentrating on anything in particular, just reading a lot of fiction now. Dostoevsky, Flaubert, Dickens, Hemingway, Faulkner, everything I can get my hands on, feeding a hunger that can't be satisfied. April 28th. In a dream last night, I heard Mom screaming at Dad and the teacher at the elementary school PS 13, my first school before they transferred me to PS 222. So now we're entering another kind of dream sequence. So this is Charlie talking about a memory that he had in a dream. He's normal, he'll grow up like other people, better than others. She was trying to scratch the teacher, but Dad was holding her back. He'll go to college someday, he'll be somebody. She kept screaming it, clawing at Dad so he'd let go of her. He'll go to college someday and he'll be somebody. We were in the principal's office and there were a lot of people looking embarrassed, but the assistant principal was smiling and turning his head so no one would see it. The principal in my dream had a long beard and was floating around the room and pointing at me. He'll have to go to a special school. Put him into the Warren State Home and Training School. We can't have him here. Dad was pulling Mom out of the principal's office, and she was shouting and crying too. I didn't see her face, but her big red teardrops kept splashing down on me. This morning, I could recall the dream, but now there's more than that. I can remember through the blur, back to when I was 6 years old and it all happened, just before Norma was born. I see Mom, a thin, dark-haired woman who talks too fast and uses her hands too much. As always, her face is blurred. Her hair is up in a bun, and her hand goes to touch it, pat it smooth, as if she has to make sure it's still there. I remember that she was always fluttering like a big white bird around my father, and he too heavy and tired to escape her pecking. I see Charlie standing in the center of the kitchen, playing with his spinner, bright-colored beads and rings threaded on a string. He holds the string up in one hand, turns the rings so they wind and unwind in bright spinning flashes. He spends long hours watching his spinner. I don't know who made it for him or what became of it, but I see him standing there fascinated as the string untwists and sets the rings spinning. She is screaming at him. No, screaming at his father. I'm not going to take him. There's nothing wrong with him. Rose, it won't do any good pretending any longer that nothing is wrong. Just look at him, Rose. 6 years old and he's not a dummy. He's normal. He'll be just like everyone else. He looks sadly at his son with the spinner, and Charlie smiles and holds it up to show him how pretty it is when it goes around and around. Put that thing away, Mom shrieks, and suddenly she knocks the spinner from Charlie's hand, and it crashes across the kitchen floor. Go play with your alphabet blocks. He stands there, frightened by the sudden outburst. He cowers, not knowing what she will do. His body begins to shake. They are arguing, and the voices back and forth make a squeezing pressure inside him and a sense of panic. Charlie, go to the bathroom. Don't you dare do it in your pants. He wants to obey her, but his legs are too soft to move. His arms go up automatically to ward off blows. For God's sake, Rose, leave him alone. You've got him terrified. You always do this, and the poor kid. Then why don't you help me? I have to do it all by myself. Every day I try to teach him, to help him catch up to the others. He's just slow, that's all. But he can learn like everyone else. You're fooling yourself, Rose. It's not fair to us or to him, pretending he's normal, driving him as if he were an animal that could learn to do tricks. Why don't you leave him alone? Because I want him to be like everyone else. As they argue, the feeling that grips Charlie's insides become greater. His bowels feel as if they will burst, and he knows he should go to the bathroom, as she has told him so often. But he can't walk. He feels like sitting down right there in the kitchen, but it is wrong, and she will slap him. He wants his spinner. If he has a spinner and he watches it going round and round, he will be able to control himself and not make in his pants. But the spinner is all apart, with some of the rings under the table and some under the sink, and the cord is near the stove. It is very strange, and although I can recall the voices clearly, their faces are still blurred, and I can see only general outlines. Dad massive and slumped, Mom thin and quick. Hearing them now, arguing with each other across the years, I have the impulse to shout at them. Look at him! There, down there! Look at Charlie! He has to go to the toilet! Charlie stands, clutching and pulling at his red checkered shirt as they argue over him. The words are angry. The words are angry sparks between them, an anger and a guilt he can't identify. Next September, he's going to go back to PS13 and do the term's work over again. Why can't you let yourself see the truth? The teacher says he's not capable of doing the work in a regular class. That bitch, a teacher? Oh, I've got better names for her. Let her start with me again, and I'll do more than just write to the Board of Education. I'll scratch that dirty slut's eyes out. Charlie, why are you twisting like that? Go to the bathroom. Go by yourself. You know how to go. Can't you see he wants you to take him? He's frightened. Keep out of this. He's perfectly capable of going to the bathroom himself. The book says it gives him confidence and a feeling of achievement. The terror that waits in that cold tile room overwhelms him. He is afraid to go there alone. He reaches up for her hand and sobs out, "Toy, toy," and she slaps his hands away. "No more," she says sternly. "You're a big boy now. You can go by yourself. Now march right into that bathroom and pull your pants down the way I taught you. I warn you, if you make in your pants, you'll get spanked." I can almost feel it now, the stretching and knotting in his intestines as the two of them stand over him, waiting to see what he will do. His whimper becomes a soft crying as suddenly he can control no longer, and he sobs and covers his face with his hands as he dirties himself. It is soft and warm, and he feels the confusion of relief and fear. It is his, but she will take it away from him as she always does. She will take it away and keep it for herself, and she will spank him. She comes towards him, screaming that he is a bad boy, and Charlie runs to his father for help. So that was a recovered memory. His parents, his mother, she still wanted to teach him. She did not want to give up on him. She wanted him to be in a regular class. She did not want to accept the fact that he has special needs. Now, if she would accept the fact that he has special needs, he could go to a special class and he could excel. And if she would accept who he is, she could learn how to make him better. But right now, she will not accept who she is, so she is punishing him as she would a regular child. And so he is afraid of the bathroom and he needs her to go with him. But she refuses to do that. And so he goes to the bathroom in his pants and then she hits him. And it's a vicious cycle because she's refusing. If she would just help him and go to the bathroom with him, then this problem would stop. And if she stopped screaming at him, he wouldn't be afraid. So this woman, though she loves Charlie and she wants the best for him, she wants him to be like everybody else, by not accepting who he is as he is, she's not allowing him to grow in any way, and he will just stay that way. So it's a very sad situation. And today we have a lot more knowledge about these issues, and so students like this are recognized early, and therefore they go to the proper class and they're taken care of properly. And abuse is not tolerated at all. So it's just a different time, but still very sad. So now we're back to modern Charlie. Suddenly, I remember that her name is Rose and his name is Matt. It's odd to have forgotten your parents' names. And what about Norma? Strange, I haven't thought about them for a long time. I wish I could see Matt's face now to know what he was thinking at that moment. All I remember is that as she began to spank me, Matt Gordon turned and walked out of the apartment. I wish I could see their faces more clearly. Progress Report 11, May 1st. Why haven't I ever noticed how beautiful Alice Kinnian is? She has pigeon-soft brown eyes and feathery brown hair down to the hollow of her neck. When she smiles, her full lips look as if she's pouting. We went to a movie and then to dinner. I didn't see much of the first picture because I was too conscious of her sitting next to me. Twice, her bare arm touched mine on the armrest, and both times the fear that she would become annoyed made me pull back. All I can think about was her soft skin just inches away. Then I saw, 2 rows ahead of us, a young man with his arm around his girl, and I wanted to put my arm around Miss Kinnian. Terrifying. But if I did it slowly, first resting my arm on the back of her seat, moving up, inch by inch, to rest near her shoulders and the back of her neck, casually, I didn't dare. The best I could do was rest my elbow on the back of her seat, and by the time I got there, I had to shift position to wipe the perspiration off my face and neck. Once, her leg accidentally brushed against mine. It became such an ordeal, so painful, that I forced myself to take my mind off her. The first picture had been a war film, and all I caught was the ending, where the GI goes back to Europe to marry the woman who saved his life. The second picture interested me. So back in the day, movies, they called them pictures, and they would show 2, so it'd be a double feature. So usually when you go to the movies, you would start with a cartoon, and then you would have 2 full movies. Not always, but in this case, he sees 2 movies. The second picture interested me. A psychological film about a man and woman apparently in love, but actually destroying each other. Everything suggests that the man is going to kill his wife, but at the last moment, something she screams out in a nightmare makes him recall something that happened to him during his childhood. The sudden memory shows him that his hatred is really directed at a depraved governess who had terrified him with frightening stories and left a flaw in his personality. Excited at discovering this, he cries out with joy so that his wife awakens. He takes her in his arms, and the implication is that all his problems have been solved. It was pat and cheap, and I must have shown my anger because Alice wanted to know what was wrong. It's a lie, I explained as we walked out into the lobby. Things just don't happen that way. Of course not, she laughed. It's a world of make-believe. Oh no, that's no answer, I insisted. Even in the world of make-believe, there have to be rules. The parts have to be consistent and belong together. This kind of picture is a lie. Things are forced to fit because the writer or the director or somebody wanted something in that didn't belong. And it doesn't feel right. She looked at me thoughtfully as we walked out into the bright, dazzling night lights of Times Square. You're coming along fast. I'm confused. I don't know what I know anymore. Never mind that, she insisted. You're beginning to see and understand things. She waved her hand to take in all of the neon and glitter around us as we crossed over to 7th Avenue. You're beginning to see what's behind the surface of things, what you say about the parts having to belong together. That was a pretty good insight. Oh, come on now. I don't feel as if I've accomplished anything. I don't understand about myself or my past. I don't even know where my parents are or what they look like. Do you know that when I see them in a flash of memory or in a dream, the faces are a blur? I want to see their expressions. I can't understand what's going on unless I can see their faces. Charlie, calm down. People were turning to stare. She slipped her arm through mine and pulled me close to restrain me. Be patient. Don't forget you're accomplishing in weeks what takes others a lifetime. You're a giant sponge soaking in knowledge. Soon you'll begin to connect things up, and you'll see how all the different worlds of learning are related. All the levels, Charlie, like steps on a giant ladder, and you'll climb higher and higher to see more of the world around you. As we entered the cafeteria on 45th Street and picked up our trays, she spoke animatedly. Ordinary people, she said, can see only a little bit. They can't change much or go any higher than they are, but you're a genius. You'll keep going up and see more and more, and each step will reveal worlds you never even knew existed. People on the line who heard her turned to stare at me, and only when I nudged her to stop did she lower her voice. I just hope to God, she whispered, that you don't get hurt. For a little while after that, I didn't know what to say. We ordered our food at the counter and carried it to our table and ate without talking. The silence made me nervous. I knew what she meant about her fear, so I joked about it. Why should I get hurt? I couldn't be any worse off than I was before. Even Algernon is still smart, isn't he? As long as he's up there, I'm in good shape. She toyed with her knife, making circular depressions in a pat of butter, and the movement hypnotized me. And besides, I told her, I overheard something. Professor Niemer and Dr. Strauss were arguing, and Niemer said he's positive that nothing can go wrong. I hope so, she said. You have no idea how afraid I've been that something might go wrong. I feel partly responsible. She saw me staring at the knife, and she put it down carefully beside her plate. I never would have done it but for you, I said. She laughed, and it made me tremble. That's when I saw that her eyes were soft brown. She looked down at the tablecloth quickly and blushed. Thank you, Charlie, she said, and took my hand. It was the first time anyone had ever done that, and it made me bolder. I leaned forward, holding onto her hand, and the words came out. I like you very much. After I said it, I was afraid she laughed, but she nodded and smiled. I like you too, Charlie. But it's more than liking. What I mean is, oh hell, I don't know what I mean. I knew I was blushing, and I didn't know where to look or what to do with my hands. I dropped a fork, and when I tried to retrieve it, I knocked over a glass of water, and it spilled on her dress. Suddenly, I had become clumsy and awkward again, and when I tried to apologize, I found my tongue had become too large for my mouth. That's all right, Charlie, she tried to reassure me. It's only water. Don't let it upset you this way. In the taxi on the way home, we were silent for a long time. And then she put down her purse and straightened my tie and puffed up my breast pocket handkerchief. You were very upset tonight, Charlie. I feel ridiculous. I upset you by talking about it. I made you self-conscious. It's not that. What bothers me is that I can't put into words the way I feel. These feelings are new to you. Not everything has to be put into words. I moved closer to her and tried to take her hand again, but she pulled away. No, Charlie, I don't think this is good for you. I've upset you, and it might have a negative effect. When she put me off, I felt awkward and ridiculous at the same time. It made me angry with myself, and I pulled back to my side of the seat and stared out of the window. I hated her as I had never hated anyone before, with her easy answers and maternal fussing. I wanted to slap her face, to make her crawl, and then to hold her in my arms and kiss her. Charlie, I'm sorry if I've upset you. Forget it. But you've got to understand what's happening. I understand, I said, and I'd rather not talk about it. By the time the cab reached her apartment on 77th Street, I was thoroughly miserable. Look, she said, this is my fault. I shouldn't have gone out with you tonight. Yes, I see that now. What I mean is, we have no right to put this on a personal, emotional level. You have so much to do. I have no right to come into your life at this time. That's my worry, isn't it? Is it? This isn't your private affair anymore, Charlie. You've got obligations now, not only to Professor Niemer and Dr. Strauss, but to the millions who may follow in your footsteps. The more she talked that way, the worse I felt. She highlighted my awkwardness, my lack of knowledge about the right things to say and do. I was a blundering adolescent in her eyes, and she was trying to let me down easy. As we stood at the door to her apartment, she turned and smiled at me, and for a moment, I thought she was going to invite me in, but she just whispered, "Good night, Charlie. Thank you for a wonderful evening." I wanted to kiss her goodnight. I had worried about it earlier. Didn't a woman expect you to kiss her? In the novels I'd read and the movies I'd seen, the man makes the advances. I had decided last night that I would kiss her, but I kept thinking, what if she turns me down? I moved closer and reached for her shoulders, but she was too quick for me. She stopped me and took my hand in hers. We'd better just say goodnight this way, Charlie. We can't let this get personal. Not yet. And before I could protest or ask what she meant by not yet, she started inside. Good night, Charlie, and thank you again for a lovely, lovely time, and closed the door. I was furious at her, myself, and the world, but by the time I got home, I realized she was right. Now, I don't know whether she cares for me or if she was just being kind. What could she possibly see in me? What makes it so awkward is that I've never experienced anything like this before. How does a person go about learning how to act toward another person? How does a man learn how to behave toward a woman? The books don't help much. But next time, I'm going to kiss her goodnight. Okay, so now we are beginning the relationship between Charlie and Miss Kinnian. Is it going to become a full romantic relationship, or is Miss Kinnian going to stop it? We know Charlie wants it to be a full romantic relationship. On that note, I'll end it there. See you guys later.